Yeah, so Dr. Jack, Judy, I mean, up until, man, like we've been working across the street for like 6 months, but up until 2 days ago, we never saw each other in Florida.
That's right.
Very busy guy. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you do and what your job here is at the NRF?
Okay, so at the University of Florida, I am the director of the Nanoscience Institute for Medical and Engineering Technology. And this institute really serves to bridge the communities of medicine, engineering, and the sciences, and trying particularly to do so in a way that can leverage major assets like this one behind us here, the micro and nanofabrication facility, materials characterization, et cetera. So I like to try to find ways to bridge the disciplines, but really when I can find a way that can leverage our major investments that we have here, then it's a win-win-win for everybody.
Exactly. Yeah, and I mean, nanofabrication, that is a very multidisciplinary thing. Like you have materials, you have electrical engineering, you have material science, just like, well, everything is in it. And then on top of that, you're going to be bringing even more things. So how does this relate to neural implants? Why would you need a clean room and a clean people in bunny suits running around to assist with neural implants?
Right. So for neural applications, it's really about scale and size, yes, but also in quantity. So if you want to make neural interfaces that have one channel, and have a modest scale, you can get away with just pulling wires and doing pulled glass pipettes and things like that and do amazing science. But if you want to start miniaturizing the whole system, getting the whole thing implanted, if you want to start increasing the channel count, then you need some type of microfabrication, typically. I mean, there might be some ways to do this with laser-based machining or other processes that maybe doesn't need all the equipment we have in here in the clean room, conventional photolithography processes. But regardless, they're typically smaller scale. It's something you want to do clean, and it's something where if you have an asset that you can leverage, why not? And so that's part of what we do here, is to try to do microfabrication of neural interfaces for a variety of applications.
Yeah, exactly, because there's almost 100 billion brain cells, and each one's a few microns, and you can't do that by hand. Or you can have an undergrad do that, but it's going to take him his whole life.
Right. No, I mean, it's true that, the approaches that we're taking are building physical objects that would work with the neural tissue and to record and stimulate it. Obviously, there's a trend now where people have been working for some time to use other means, photonic means, to interact with tissue, optogenetics, et cetera. So those are very exciting areas. But if you're going to be, conventional commercialization of neurotechnologies have been ones where you've had physical interaction with the object. It has predominantly been electrical. And so we're just trying to push that trajectory as far as one can in a beneficial way for patients.
Sounds good. And what's some of your research, or what have you been working on in terms of neural implant projects?
Right. So here we've focused on actually peripheral nerve interfaces. So you of course know I was at DARPA for a time, and we funded a variety of research trying to look at what was going wrong and why with these neural interfaces, and trying to increase the reliability of peripheral and central nervous system interfaces. And the guide star for me was serving the amputee, right? The wounded warrior. That's why I was there. Along the way, it became clear that peripheral interfaces offered a heck of a lot of benefit without having to penetrate the amputee's brain, the skull. So we invested in that, and there was some progress that was made. But, by the time I left, there was a lot more that could be done. And when I came here, I recognize the tremendous opportunity to actually combine more fields. I don't know, I have a long history of combining fields, whether it's mechanical and electrical and small scales. That was the field called MEMS, if you remember, back in the late 80s, early 90s. I got excited about that in grad school. And then neuroengineering is doing that. And now in our application, we take microfabricated electrode arrays with tissue engineering to combine the best of both of those worlds to create a hybrid construct that could be implanted into tissue and interact, in our case particularly, we think advantageously with peripheral nerves, particularly of amputees. We're trying to increase the channel count to increase the selectivity of recording and stimulation to give them finer control and more, finer sensitivity on their sensory percepts.
Okay, interesting. And what kind of improvements, what kind of channel counts have we gotten to now, and what are you working on?
So good question. So thus far we've been proving out the technology, and we could fabricate high channel counts, no problem. But if you want to make it channels that last a long period of time, or if you want to make it something that can, easily come out of the body with the electrical connection, it becomes more challenging. And so we've been focusing not on channel count at this stage, but on, say, channel density, or on, more specifically, on just validating this whole tissue-engineered electronic neural interface approach that we have, which forms an acronym called TEENY. We've been validating that. Is this a valid approach? Does it scale? And what are the challenges? And so it's looking very promising. We're getting recordings within a few days after implantation, despite having to regenerate through the scaffold consisting of a hydrogel and the microfabricated structure. And so that's very promising, but maintaining long-term reliability, that is a continuing challenge, and we see improvements there. And I'm also very worried about, as we scale up channel count, how do we achieve good electrical connection between the microfabricated electrode array and the electronics of the rest of your system, right? That's beginning to blur into packaging, and frankly, that's an area that really hasn't gotten much of an investment, whether from academic researchers or from federal agencies. Of course, companies are leaders in deploying commercially chronically implantable and scalable packaging, but only scalable to what they feel is necessary or that the technology allows. And so current technology used for implantable devices, for connectors, one where you can actually disconnect the electrode array from the rest of the electronics for, say, battery changes and upgrade without having to pull the interface out of the tissue and potentially damage it and have to re-implant it. No. If you have to have a disconnectable, reconnectable connector, that technology hasn't evolved for like 40 years.
Wow.
The conventional technique that's been used, it really hasn't evolved. It's served well. And I can talk to you more about that. But I think, so I'm excited about the microfabricated electrode and pushing that, providing the environment through tissue engineering to get better outcomes. But I also worry about the back-end processes to make this whole thing translatable and commercializable. And so those are the kinds of things that my research group is interested in.
Would you say almost the packaging is, at this point, more important than the actual electrode?
I wouldn't say that, but it can't be ignored, right? You can, there are alternatives, right? You can point to the cochlear ear implant as a great success, right? It doesn't have a disconnection, right? That is one that's chronic. There's no battery, right? And so you have to constantly wear a device there that doesn't look necessarily normal. So that's sub-ideal. It'd be nice if everything was hidden. And so the retinal prosthetic is another device where there's no ability to disconnect it. And again, no battery. And so, that might be fine, but I could imagine if these are lifetime implants, and there's been improvements, it'd be nice to be able to improve the technology on, say, the algorithm or the hardware on the backside, or there indeed could be damage or something where you need to replace it. And not having to take the array and the tacks or whatever's used to attach the array to the retina and redo it, it's probably sub-ideal. They certainly don't do that for deep brain stimulation leads. They put those in and they leave them there, and they disconnect the extension and reconnect in there. And so that's my guide, is to do that. So it's possible to avoid it, and if you're doing science and you're demonstrating possibility, you don't usually have to worry about it because there's alternatives in preclinical models. You don't have to do that kind of packaging. But if you really want to deploy this in patients, and you want to scale up the challenge, it inevitably becomes a huge challenge. Now, there are ways to go from high electrode count to the electronics in a separate. You can take a strategy that takes the package, like say DBS has a large package, one large package, battery, electronics, telemetry, everything, and they connect in there. Every channel has to have a connection back at that primary package. There's a movement these days to say have a distal package, which has no battery, just multiplexing electronics to allow high channel counts to come in and few channel counts to come out to go to the larger package with the battery and telemetry. And so, but still you need a high channel count mating with this device, with the electronics, and maybe that one doesn't have to be replaced as often, or hopefully not at all. But if there's a way where it's not that difficult to make it detachable, then why not? And so we're trying to enable that possibility in the future, because I think it'll be advantageous.
Yeah, but that still adds another point of failure, the possible point of failure in the packaging and everything like this too.
Yeah, no doubt. And look, the packaging has to have enough channel isolation. It has to have enough, low contact resistance for the given channel, and also, good reliability over time. And usually you want the physician to know, oh, I have a good insertion. There's all these sort of basic requirements for these packages that are necessary, that can be engineered, but they do have to be. It adds complexity, but the alternative is to just take wire, go percutaneous. That's got its issues with it too. So
interesting. So I want to talk about your time at DARPA. Like, how did you get into this? Who tapped you on the shoulder, and what were you thinking? And then how would you describe your time at DARPA as well?
So, as a graduate student at the University of California at Berkeley, in the Berkeley Sensor and Actuator Center, known as BSAC, this was one of the leading centers in MEMS research at the time, and they had quite a bit of DARPA money, because back then Dr. Ken Gabriel was a program manager at DARPA funding MEMS research. And he was very successful at creating programs on all these different multidisciplinary topics. And so my faculty advisors were very good at raising money. And so I had many opportunities to interact and be aware of DARPA as a funding agency for research as a graduate student. And then I saw my peers from graduate school go off and become professors, and then they go and serve as a program manager at DARPA. And other faculty at Berkeley, when I was a grad student, after I had left, one of those professors became a program manager at DARPA. So I knew several people who had gone on to, in fact, my undergraduate advisor back at the University of Minnesota, he was a program manager. So I had many people do this and thought, hey, that seems like an interesting job. People I know and respect seem to do it well and have major impact and enjoy it. And so I thought, that was always something to maybe think about. But it's not the kind of thing you apply for, right? At least I didn't think of it. It's this kind of thing, like you said, you kind of get tapped on the shoulder. And so what happened to me was Dr. Greg Kovacs, who was director of the Microsystems Technology Office at DARPA. He was a MEMS person. He knew of my work for years. And also Tom Kenny was a program manager. He was a colleague of Greg's. Greg was from Stanford. Tom Kenny was from Stanford. And so they both were aware of my work. And at a conference, I think swimming out in the ocean off of Hilton Head, South Carolina, they said, hey, Jack, have you ever thought about? And
wait, you guys were swimming when they proposed this? Or
yeah.
What? That's funny.
Look, you're at a conference.
Yeah.
Right. This is a very highly social conference.
Exactly.
And so there's, a volleyball thing and whatever. And then this is out late at night. The conference is all over. You're checking out the triboluminescent plankton or whatever. And they just said, hey,
That's
have
really
you thought
cool.
about that? And I said, well, I thought about it, but I never really, maybe you should apply. And so I took that as an invitation and applied, and the rest, I guess, is history.
Wow, that's pretty incredible. So you weren't any stranger to DARPA,
No.
or like leading it or something like this. It was kind of, you've seen so many people do it, people that you respected, that you're just like, why not? And so how was your time at DARPA? Like, as far as I understand, each program manager kind of sets the tone for it for the few years that they're there, and maybe not change the course, but like redirect it a little bit. And so what was your focus, and maybe how did you start, and how did you finish at DARPA?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So when I got hired, I had a vision to launch programs in two thrusts. One being MEMS, one that involved some advanced materials integration processes, That really built on half of what I did at UCLA as a professor, which was in the MEMS field, the magnetic MEMS and other types of material-based MEMS. And then, of course, I also want to do things in neurotechnology because I was very excited about the potential there. And actually, at UCLA, where I was a professor, we really started moving strongly in that direction. When I came, we looked at trying to bridge medicine and engineering with neuroscience. And as an assistant professor, I was excited about that and was thrust forward as a primary point of contact for the College of Engineering, and then worked with the director of the Brain Research Institute at the time, Dr. Alan Tobin, and we created we got funded an NSF training grant in neuroengineering back in, I think, 98. So this is really early days for the concept of bridging medicine and engineering in the neurotechnology space. And through that experience of bringing in amazing graduate students to be part of that program, many now who are very successful professors and leaders in industry in the neurotechnology space, I'm very proud of their success. I discovered with their help that neurotechnology was having problems. That all these wonderful visions promulgated by leading faculty members were exciting, but in some cases seemed built on quicksand. That there were some fundamental underlying challenges that were not receiving the attention they deserved. And that was the reliability problem. I had students who were doing microelectrode, microwires pulled to record and stimulate tissue, and these things were failing after weeks. And then I said, gee, why is this happening? Do other people have this problem? We go and investigate it and discover that, yeah, everybody has this problem. And no one talks about it. And so I was floored. That's not something that's going to be acceptable going forward. And I don't see people working on that. And I just, I had been through the hype cycle. There's a great plot of the, hype cycle, the peak of unsustainability, the trough of disillusionment, or whatever. The plateau maybe of sustainability. And I'd seen MEMS go through that. And that caused an exciting field of MEMS with great potential, which didn't meet the unrealistic visions of people that were pushed. And so people were disappointed, thought it couldn't deliver, pulled back, and the field recovered though because it could. Airbags and all of these inertial devices in our phones. Just MEMS is everywhere now. And anything that's smart, has a sensor in it, or actuator and things like that, and they're microfabricated, made small, made cheap, that was MEMS. But it went through this hype cycle, and it damaged the field for a while, and it wasn't good. And then at UCLA, and nano was the next big hype cycle, and of course that has its own challenges there. And I didn't really want neurotechnology to go through that kind of hype cycle. These are impossible perhaps to avoid, but I thought, and when I was given that opportunity to go to DARPA, I thought, you know what? We should have a program focusing a bright light on this ugly wart in the field that people aren't addressing that needs attention. And it's not exactly the kind of program you'd think of as a DARPA program, but it's definitely what they call DARPA hard, but it's not so sexy.
What's DARPA hard?
DARPA hard is, you want to do things that are not evolutionary. You want to do things that are revolutionary. You want to do things that are disruptive, right? DARPA thinks of itself as the venture capital arm of the military, right? And their mission, ever since Sputnik, going over the heads of Americans back in the 1950s, we were surprised by that technology, in that case, of an adversary. And the whole mission of DARPA is to avoid surprise in the future and to impose surprise, perhaps on our advisors going forward, by creating disruptive technologies with 10x, 100x improvements, what have you. So things that are DARPA hard, sort of meet those bars. And achieving improvements in lifetimes from a year to life of the patient, DARPA hard, right? And some of the methodologies that we could try to employ to achieve that would also be very difficult. So anyway, I created a program on that, and at the time, Dr. Ken Gabriel, that program manager in the MEMS field, he had gone to industry, commercialized an acoustic microphone device, and he was drawn back to DARPA, and he was the deputy director at the time when I was there, for part of the time. And so he and the director at the time approved the technology, but they kind of wanted me to focus on that. And so my MEMS-based programs were not funded, and instead, I focused on this neurotechnology one and grew that into the peripheral nerve and the central nervous system areas. And so, things at DARPA change, right? I think I had 3 or 4 different directors. Well, there were directors and there were interim directors and deputy directors that were risen to I had different. Greg Kovacs eventually left, and so there's turnover there. A thing that people maybe don't realize. You think about government agencies as being, these ossified, never-changing old things, and it's like, no, DARPA, it changes fast. You can't stay there as an academic, which I was, more than 4 years. Otherwise, you give up your tenure position at your institution. And so DARPA intentionally has turnover, right? That's good for getting new people in with new ideas. It can have a downside that you can, repeat things that you've tried before. Hopefully now with more advanced technology you can break through as opposed to falling into the same trap. But yeah, so that's sort of, the DARPA perspective that I had.
And you were there for 4 years then, right?
And I was there for 4 years, yeah. I was at UCLA at the time. I had just finished submitting my case to become a full professor. And so it seemed like a good opportunity. I had one small child. At that time, my spouse wasn't working, so it was very easy to make the move. It's very difficult sometimes for people to make moves for professional and personal reasons. And I felt like the time was good. And so I decided to jump at that opportunity and take advantage of it.
To go to DC and
yeah, I moved the whole family out there, right? I mean, it made it difficult, right? So I still had a lab with students in it, and they're, most of them in their final few years, a few of them mid-career, all of them that were still there, they were co-advised, and so, I was able to advise them and graduate some going forward, but maintaining a lab, 3 time zones and thousands of miles away is tricky. Of course, if it's easier in one time zone in the DC area or perhaps out to someplace like, 4 hours away like Pittsburgh, it's possible. But so I found that to be a challenge. But, it can be managed. But can it be managed with a family? Can it be managed with all these things? So yeah, it's a tricky thing. But, when you go to DARPA, you go with the desire, at least I did, and I know others that I respect as well did as well. It's an act of service, right? We're trying to serve the nation. I'm not going to run around in a uniform with a gun to defend the nation. Instead, what can I do to enable them to do that job better and/or safer or after action to live a full and meaningful life, right? So, I have all these degrees, but what have I really done, right? I've worked at a public institution, that's fine. But that's not exactly giving, to the nation. You can work for companies and make a bunch of money, and that's great, you're giving products, but I don't know. I mean, I felt definitely a sense of service, and I, my family has a little bit of a history with working with the military, and so, it just seemed like a good fit, and it definitely was. I really enjoyed my time. It was an exciting period, and it provided professional diversity and experience. And actually the most amazing thing about the DARPA job that I had that I did not anticipate was how fantastic of an opportunity it was to learn. Right. So you go in there and you know a bunch of things, but you would stretch yourself and you go into areas that you lack knowledge. And so when you're a DARPA program manager, you can call up absolute leaders in the field and they will take your call. And they'll say, hey, I'm going to be in DC next week or next month. I'd be happy to swing by and basically give you a private lecture, right? Or go in depth on something. And there's no promise of money. It's just, hey, I need to know this for this, what's the limits of that? And, people will respond. And so any topic I wanted to learn about, I could learn about. When I visited labs, they would show me pretty much everything. And I would ask all these challenging questions because, again, that was my job. I was trying to push them. Sometimes a little uncomfortably, but that's fine. I mean, that's part of the gig. And but I learned so much and had so many amazing experiences that I really valued it.
I mean, as you said too, like you didn't really know much about neural engineering before that, and then that was one of the pools? What are the swimming pools that you were thrown into and you just had to learn, right?
Right. Well, no, I mean, from 98 through 2009. So I spent 9 years at UCLA working, coming up in the neurotechnology space with students. So I had definitely some experience with that. I mean, there are colleagues of mine who were academically born and raised in the field who I think know it in more depth. I did not have training in the area, right? But I definitely knew quite a bit, more than enough to be dangerous. But so my challenge there when I went to DARPA was, being able to now be able to, not challenge, but I was able to see into these labs and understand, look at these companies commercializing neural interfaces. What's the true state of these technologies? How reliable are they? What are your results? I mean, Professor John Donahue at Brown still is one of the leading researchers in brain-machine interface work, working with non-human primates, and he's put in the state-of-the-art neural technology at the time of the Black Rock, Utah probe array. And I spoke to him one time to say, aren't you having these reliability problems? What are your statistics, right? I mean, I had my observation, but I'm no John Donahue. I had nowhere near that kind of a length of experience and depth of knowledge in this area. And through our interactions, shortly thereafter, he comes out with this paper where he indeed publishes and shows, the reliability lifetime of the interfaces in his team's expert hands, and showed that these things were amazing, but they had huge reliability problems. And so, there's a limit to what you can do standing up in the back or front row of a conference auditorium saying, yeah, but what about the reliability? Shouldn't that be an issue? Well, they're not getting funded to do this. This doesn't seem to be an important issue. Industry's not clamoring for it, so nothing's going to happen. It's something that fell really between the cracks. There weren't that many journals that would care to respect or publish something like that. Tenure cases, people want to push careers in that trajectory. And so when DARPA comes in and says, wait a minute, no, this is a problem that we have to overcome because we want to provide these systems that perform at this level for our wounded warriors. And so if no one else is going to crack this tough nut, we're going to try and help other people do it. And so, and then that's the case. All this bright light on that, people are talking about it, and they're still talking about it. They're aware of this, and so it's always put in that kind of context. How can you overcome that? And I see the journals respecting it and the funding agencies behind it. And so, it's had a continued echo beyond that to continue to promote work in this area to overcome these still, as of yet, imperfectly addressed challenges to, again, serve the needs of patients going forward.
Wow, that's fascinating. So it kind of sounds like you single-handedly changed the field, or at least with your bully pulpit and promises of wads of cash that you're like, okay, we should focus on this more.
Well, I mean, that's the deal. When you go there, you can say, hey, I think this is an interesting direction to go into and hasn't received much investment, or is so new no one's thought about it, let's go after it. And it's common, though, for DARPA to actually follow. Right? There are sometimes breakthrough discoveries or work funded, say, by the National Science Foundation. That doesn't give a lot of money, but spreads it around a lot of different topics in a lot of different areas, and interesting things percolate up there to say, wait a minute, that has promise. Let's now scale that up. If you don't have a limitation of money, really so much, and ambition and where you might want to apply this, that's where DARPA can come in. It can say, hey, we want to take this cool element you have and we want to scale it up. Oh, and it's not just going to be a component, it has to be part of a system. So DARPA requires teaming, either at your institution or multi-institution, to usually deploy some type of subsystem, if not a whole system. And that's what it can do. It can sort of facilitate the jumping of that gap between technology demonstration and feasible demonstration in a reasonably imaginable, deployable platform.
That's really cool. Okay, so I like this idea of the hype cycle and everything that you've been talking about. So you said that MEMS went through the hype cycle, and even by the early 2000s, it had already gone down the disillusionment side, or when would you say it was the peak of the hype and the trough of the hype?
That's a good question. So for MEMS, I'd say, well, as an undergrad, I'm looking at the cover of every magazine in the 1988 timeframe having a silicon micromotor, this blow your mind concept of, gears and motors smaller than the diameter of your hair, with tiny little elements even way smaller than that. It inspired me. As someone who had a father who was an electrical engineer and a professor, and a brother who was an electrical engineer, and going to MIT, and these really smart guys. I wanted to be different. I wanted to be a mechanical engineer, and so I went to Minnesota and did that, and didn't really like thermodynamics. It didn't really work for me, I guess, and so my dad switched me back. I got convinced to come back into electrical engineering, but then here comes this field of MEMS, right? That combined mechanical and electrical, and they're tiny, and it could be like robots, and it just seemed so amazing. I said, I got to do that. It combines my areas, and it seemed to have a lot of potential. I didn't know about job opportunities. It was too forward-looking at that time, and I didn't really mind. And so that's how I got into that field. And so then I went to Berkeley around 1990, and that was an exciting time all the way through the 90s. But there starts to, in the mid 90s, mid to late 90s, there's some hype issues there. And it depends on the economics of the time, whether from my colleagues getting jobs. But certainly then sometime in the 2000, there was a big investment in MEMS for optical switches, but then that all collapsed with the economic challenges there. So before then, there was the initial MEMS promise, but then I think by the late 90s and early 2000s, a lot of good commercial MEMS products were delivering. The airbag sensors and all these printer heads and everything, they were doing quite well. We got another resurgence in the optical arena, but then something else killed that. So.
Okay, and where would you say neural interfaces is on that compared to that?
Yeah, good question. Well, it depends. So you could say MEMS, or you could say neurotechnology as a field is here or there, but it really depends. I mean, clearly, deep brain stimulation for movement disorders has been a tremendous success, right? And cochlear ear implants have been a tremendous success. And so, did those go through a hype cycle? Not so much necessarily. Now, people have tried to use deep brain stimulation for other things. Now, those can go through the hype cycle, right? So this technology, deep brain stimulation, let's take a lead from a cardiac pacemaker and stick it in the brain. And there wasn't a lot of specific design, custom engineering there specifically for the brain. That's a whole nother topic, rationally designing a neural interface for specific neural targets. But nonetheless, you could do it, and it works well enough, and you can improve it. But when you start going, if you have a well-defined target, and you have a well-engineered system, and it achieves the therapeutic goals, then you have success. But now you start drifting over into, well, I'm not quite sure about the target, or there's debate about it. Depression, deep brain stimulation for depression has undergone some big ups and downs, right? And people tried to use it for addiction. And people have come out and said, wait a minute, you don't have a target there. This is unethical, But so there's people who are going to push it into all these different areas. And you can imagine if it could work for one and these others have this neurological basis, you imagine it could be applied there. And so it has a lot of potential, and we should be excited about pushing in that direction. We can't promise. We can't, and the time horizons on this stuff can be long depending on what you're trying to address. So it's that balance between, overpromising the potential of an imagined or an existing technology and its ability to deliver. So, retinal prosthetics have taken a long time to come. I mean, Bob Greenberg and his team there and in the LA area have gotten a lot of money from a lot of sources, and eventually they engineered the heck out of that thing. And now that is helping patients. Commercially it's having its challenges, but they're achieving some success there in terms of impact. Was that, overhyped or whatnot? I don't know. So it's application specific. In fact, we have a survey sometimes that we give out to groups to say, where do you think these various neurotechnologies are on the hype cycle? And it's, it's well suited for some and less for others, but so some are well past maturity, some are showing some promise, some have peaked and aren't as promising as we thought and are coming down, but it's so diverse that I don't think the field is being hampered as much. But there have been some prominent failures, right? When the companies and investors invest a lot of money, North Star Neuroscience and these other areas, there can be a few failures that can affect attitudes in the field, the attitudes of investors, perhaps even some of the funding agencies, but I think we've kind of gone through a bunch of that. And I don't know, maybe some adjustment of attitudes regarding where are the real challenges, what are the real needs for these things. Do we have led to, I think, a more mature understanding, and now the field is progressing a little bit more evenly. So I don't think we're going to experience the same kinds of crushing, vaporization of funding and stuff like that. In fact, if anything, with the whole brain initiative and everything that came out right when toward the tail end of my time at DARPA, there's definitely sustainability that's present here, and a bit of a Teflon nature. There could be failures, but it's still, it's going. But we shouldn't grow overly confident, right? And I hope that by focusing on fundamental challenges that still exist, and again, being open and honest about what these things are, that we'll be able to deliver. But woe be to those who overpromised on things that the technology is really not ready for because they misunderstood it. Then to them as well as potentially to the rest of us. So we have to be careful.
Yeah, overpromising and under-delivering, and in the end, it might not prove to be correct. But actually, this is kind of funny that you mentioned this. I mean, when you talk about this, I kind of think about bioelectronic medicine, like electroceuticals. It's like, oh, it can be used for anything, tons of different applications. And so I'm a little bit worried about now what you're saying about this is like, oh, if bioelectronic medicine, might basically taking the role of pharmaceuticals and turning it and from neural implants, something like
absolutely.
This. If it's on this hype cycle as well.
That's definitely an exciting area. Yeah, and so the people from GlaxoSmithKline came around the DARPA again around that same time, and it is an exciting area. And look, the pharmaceutical industry has a challenge, right? It's costing them too much to develop too few drugs. It's not a really sustainable business model. And so it was quite visionary of them to recognize the opportunities, the accomplishments of individuals in our field, like Kevin Tracy and others, that, hey, maybe we could have a different paradigm, a different strategy. And it's proven feasible in some cases. So why not create this big splash? And so, there was a big splash, prominent articles and everything. But frankly, the Brain Initiative kind of started doing the same thing. When that first came out, I was like, oh no, here we go. All this, hype blowing up the field again. I thought, I kind of had taken a little air out of the balloon and we focused on things and it was blowing up again. Yeah, but whatever. I was getting out. That was not my responsibility anymore. And I think, the field is still there. We haven't, deflated in any huge capacity. Bioelectronic medicines has a lot of great promise. And that's based on a few demonstrations and the basic understanding of neural connectivity and the vision. Hey, it is possible, but of course the devil's always in the details, right? And so for that particular case, and frankly for any of these cases, you have to have a clear identification of the target. You have to engineer the interface specifically for that target. You need to develop algorithms to engage with that target with that interface. And I would say you have to have a packaged system that is reliable to make the whole thing go, otherwise it won't, translate, right? And so, there's movement on these fronts, and is a single channel cuff around one of the biggest nerves, the different branches of the vagus nerve, is that sufficient to achieve the therapeutic goals? Or maybe we have some adverse side effects that are undesirable. Maybe we need more targeted stimulation. Well, the market will say, science will say, nature will say, but not the marketing people, right? So we have to be careful. So I'm excited about bioelectronic medicines. I'm a fan of it, but I am worried about the rest. I think we may need some microfabrication here to have some higher resolution, and I'm excited about trying to push whether it's teeny or other microfabricated electrode arrays and tissue engineering where it makes sense in the combined form, perhaps to try to increase that channel count, increase the spatial resolution for the eventuality when it may be necessary. I'm not saying it's going to be necessary, and there's a huge incentive to make it work with just a cuff electrode on the outside, 1 or 2 channels, and maybe for small branches. I don't know. It's unclear how well it's going to work in the end over time, but it's definitely worth pursuing. And I think it requires sustainable investment. I think it would, frankly, as others I've spoken to know, I think it's something that could be well served by having a center of research at a university funded for a decade to address a lot of these underlying challenges as well as pursue opportunities that are revealed. Right? There's plenty of people who grab a cuff, pick a nerve, stim, run, go to marketplace, try to create something that will hopefully serve someone without necessarily proving it out and validating it and showing all the side effects maybe. So I think a center could work well in that regard. And there have been centers around the nation that have been funded in the neurotechnology space. Out at the University of Southern California, there was the center, a National Science Foundation Engineering Research Center focused on the retinal prosthetic as well as a memory prosthetic. I think the retinal prosthetic was probably the big portion there. And look, lo and behold, that effectively has been commercialized and has been a success. The University of Washington in Seattle has an engineering research center as well. It was the Center on Sensory Motor Integration, trying to, bring sensory and motor together and achieve control. And they have some interesting work in plasticity and the spinal cord and some amazing work. They're a great team out there. But I think, there could be one in bioelectronic medicines or the neurotechnology for the autonomic nervous system and other related non-motor and to some degree non-traditional sensory modalities. I think could be well served because, industry likes things, especially in this biotechnology space, that are a bit more conservative by and large. The larger companies, smaller companies can do it. Be a little bit more aggressive. But the whole field, with FDA approval requirements and the cost of everything, they tend to be a bit more conservative. Well, at a center, you could incubate things for longer and validate them further so that they seem like lower risk and then can get picked up more easily once the research at the university is essentially completed.
Wow, that's pretty impressive, actually. That's kind of a very interesting idea, to really push things along in a safe way, like you're saying, and not overhype things. But I don't know. I think it's kind of funny, because you're worried about not overhyping things, but here you are talking to me, So why are you you kind of sound like scientists shouldn't talk to journalists at all or anything like this. Well, what's your rationale for this?
It gives me an opportunity to say what I said about the real heavily, right? So
and the fact that it is long form, that it's not going to be cut or anything like this, and it's not. I might do clickbait headline or something like this, but still at the end of the day, people are going to hear your whole reasoning behind it, right?
Right. No, I think that's true. The field is exciting. It has amazing potential, but it's very challenging, and it requires multidisciplinary teams, like you said earlier, like nanotechnology is as well. And so that's one of the things that I feel very fortunate to be at the University of Florida, where they have a really great medical school and a great engineering school immediately adjacent to one another, right? I host with my colleagues from neurology a neurotechnology dinner every the second, I think, Monday of the month, where we have initially it was just to get people, the faculty, to socialize, get to know each other, and to become aware of what each other was doing. And then it started building into collaborations, and then eventually effective grants, and just being able to launch off after things. And so then eventually, when we have the potential to go after a center, I think we're in a pretty good position to do those kinds of things. And it's, through that kind of interaction. So, I like to promote things. I like to support them. I like to be honest about it. And, I think we can walk and chew gum. I think we can do both. So
sounds good. Yeah. I have to say as well. I work literally across the street from here, and it's amazing that, like you said, that the neuroscience is here. neurosurgeons are, literally eating at the same place, and I haven't really seen. Okay, maybe there's like a handful of places like this in the world where everything's all in one place, and you can literally run into somebody that you need to talk to, on the way to work or on the way to a class or something like this. So I've really liked UF so far.
Yeah, no. I mean, we have great clinicians who are implanting these devices and can give ground truth on how effective they are and how convenient those connectors are or not, or whatever. I mean, and they're very well respected by the device manufacturers, so they have great relationships there, and so. And we've been able to recruit people. So like your advisor, Dr. Cavanato, and Karima Weiss, and others, and I think we're interested in hiring more in this space. So it's one that's, received some commitment of the institution and potentially could even, of course, get more. But I think we have a great nucleus and have a great opportunity to increase the team diversity and depth of capability that we can bring forth to tackle these very challenging problems.
Yeah, excellent. Any parting words or any final thoughts before we finish up?
No, other than always looking for fantastic graduate students and postdocs in this area, not just myself, my colleagues. And so I would encourage any student who's watching this to reach out to me and or my colleagues, and I encourage you to engage with us even before applying to make sure it's a good fit, and we'll see, because these challenges are so long, right? They take so long to address that it really requires a constant influx of fresh minds, fresh bodies, fresh perspectives, and so that's a function, of course, we serve as a institution of higher learning here in education and research and training, is to prepare the next generations of cohorts to go out into industry, into the neurotechnology industry, with the training necessary to help support that industry to be more successful. So, and I would encourage industry, if you're interested in engaging with universities over a sustainable time period and want to get access to really amazing students, to, again, reach out to me. I'd be happy to connect you up with some of our accomplishments here and the people doing the cutting edge work, and maybe you'll find that exciting to support some of the work being done in Kevin's lab or Kareem's lab or my lab or
all of them. Why not? I mean, a collaboration, something like this.
Yeah.
Literally, it's across the street, so why not? You can have your finger in all the dikes.
There you go.
Okay, Dr. Jack, Judy, thank you so much. This was a pleasure, and I hope we'll talk more in the future. I mean, obviously, we're here, but
all right,
thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you.